This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
You know, it's a lot on the body, but it's a lot of the brain power too. And when we play in Florida, you know, fans are crazy. The games are how the games are. So I kind of really like the way we kind of responded after I think we had a slower start in the first, great second period, and you know, third period with a little bit of ups and downs, a couple of bad bounces, but JJ was there for us, and you know, I think everybody did a pretty good job of kind of dialing it in overtime, and at the end of the third there, you know, they got a good shot, good goal, but other than that, I think we kept them to the outside pretty well.
Gage Gonsalves. He's gotten a lot of run on this show, not only from us, but from our audience who want to see the young man perform at a very high level. And I think at times he has. We've talked about his consistency. I don't want to say issues, but he's working through those things, as most young players do, partner. Dave Mishkin on the other side. He's out west, right? What time is it for you?
Yes.
It's 9, right?
9, yes.
All right.
I woke up at like 3:30 local time. I'm pretty much awake at 6:30. That's usually, I'm not always getting up at 6:30, but I'm usually waking up.
Yeah,
I don't have young kids anymore like you do, but I got kids at home. They're sleeping way past 6:30 in the morning.
I can't even.
I'm usually up
fathom
between. I'm usually up between 6:30 and 7:30. The dogs need to go out, and so by the end of this trip, I probably will have adjusted. But I got to write a column this morning. I made use of my time, Greg. It's on the Lightning's website right now. We talked about the 30,000-foot view. I basically said the Lightning have had a great, almost first half.
Yeah.
Not that they've almost been great. I think they've had a great first half. We're 3 games shy of the first half being over. They played 38 games.
Have you had a chance to do a little digging and see kind of where this first half ranks with some of the most recent ones?
I'm looking more at how the Lightning are ranking based on other teams.
Gotcha.
But, Coop was asked again. When was it? It was one of the recent. I was at this particular pregame press conference. I was not at the one when they played Montreal. It was against Florida. So it was the day of the Florida game. And Coop was asked again about the condensed schedule with injuries. And he said, again, flat out, I do not believe the schedule has been any more condensed so far this year. Now, he acknowledged second half of the year a little different. We have to go back and look and see, when do regular seasons typically end. Sometimes if you start a week later, you have to bake that into the cake. When is the season starting? But I know for a fact, Greg, and last year the Lightning were out in California at this exact same time, a little bit later. They didn't play New Year's Eve. I think they might have played January 2nd. They started the trip in San Jose last year. I remember we were at the halfway point on this very trip last year. Same schedule, same time of the month, early January.
Yeah.
You look at most teams are hitting the halfway point. They're going to be at 40 to 41 games coming up this week. That is not – they didn't hit 41 games before Christmas. That would be a condensed schedule. So Coop is right. Now, you're pulling 3 weeks out in February. How are you going to make up those games? I do think that there may be more of a condensed schedule in the second half, and the reporter was also asking about practice time and lack thereof, and he said, yes, that is true. That is kind of contingent on your schedule. Are you home for a bit? If you're home for a bit, then you have more practice time. If you're bouncing around on the road, it's harder to get practice time. The Lightning have a practice schedule today, but look at their last several days, Greg, in terms of what kind of practice time can they have. There was no practice during the holiday break. So they left the morning of the Florida game. They went to Sunrise. They had a full skate, but it was a skate. It wasn't really a practice. It was more get the blood pumping, etc. They played Saturday. They played Sunday. Yesterday was a travel day. No practice. Today they have a full practice. This will be a legit practice, but now you've got game Wednesday, game Thursday, probably an off day on Friday because you're coming off a back-to-back. Game Saturday, fly home. Get home at midnight or something like that. They may have a practice Monday, but I just gave you over a week, right? How many practices are the Lightning going to have? And they're not alone. So if your game goes wobbly, coaches like to have on-ice practice sessions to kind of correct things. You can do a lot on video, but there's some things that really you need to be on the ice and work through kind of the muscle memory. And morning skates are not that. It's hard to kind of get into the sorts of drills that they get into in a non-game day practice on a game day. You want to be careful, like not to have too much physical activity because you get a game later that night, right? Today will be different. Today will probably be a practice where they're like, we want to get a lot accomplished here, and we'll also check on availability. It's possible Eric Chernak comes back. He hasn't played since the Lightning had a game in Washington in, early-ish November. So he'll be a welcome return. If not for the next game, maybe at some point on this trip. But to answer your question, what did I base it on? It was less about where the Lightning are relative to other years and more about where are the Lightning statistically compared to the other teams in the East. The East is crazy, Greg. It is crazy. We are approaching the halfway point. We still don't have one team under Hockey 500, which basically means all 16 teams do have a path to get into the playoffs. I mean, Buffalo's won 9 in a row, and you might say, like, why is Buffalo not in, like, first place in the division? Well, part of it is they were under Hockey 500 when they started the win streak. Yeah. But, I mean, they needed that win streak. And now they are ahead of a lot of other teams, but they're not totally in the clear. There are a couple of teams in the clear. They're all in the West. Colorado's in the clear. Dallas is in the clear to an extent. Minnesota is in the clear. 3 teams from the same division. The thing I noticed, and I'll punt back to you and we can kind of get into the numbers if you want. If you look at the 32 teams in the NHL right now, and you just do standings based on league, not even by conference, just 1 to 32, the bottom 8 teams are all in the West. So that means the 16 Eastern teams plus the 8 playoff teams right now above the playoff cut line in the West, those are your top 24. That tells you how tight the East has been, and that is an important component to understand when you're looking at what the Lightning have done well this year. They probably should be in a better spot than where they are, but their numbers, their underlying numbers are better. They are objectively better than any other team in the East. So that kind of makes you think, well, if they can keep it up, they're going to be in really good shape. And some of these teams that don't have good underlying numbers, are they going to be able to maintain this? How much of what they've done this year is a little bit by hook or by crook? That was what Coop was talking about. It's like you want to be a team that outplays the other team more than the opposite. If you're getting outplayed and you're getting points, that's not really sustainable.
Sure.
So how many of these Eastern teams, I'm not taking anything away from them, they are where they are, but how many of their points have been gained kind of a little bit by hook or by crook? And I'm not going to say they're going to fall off the map, but maybe they can't maintain the pace that they have set in the first almost 40 games.
It's interesting. I was going to say about all this practice time, though, partner.
Yeah, I covered a lot there.
No,
sorry.
I don't think, I don't like the parity. Maybe I'm in the minority. Maybe I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can have an 82-game season and have quality of play be what you want it to be and have a bunch of parity at the same time. Because I think that much emphasis on every game because things are so tight for 82 games, I think lends itself to worn-out hockey clubs, potentially maybe more injuries because the games are more stressful. And I don't know how in the world you expect to have more practice time during that phase. Like, that's a domino effect. These games are intense. I don't have time to take off. I mean, you just gave the numbers. I mean, if every team is in a playoff hunt 35-plus games into a regular season, you can't take games off, theoretically.
No.
Everyone, mentally and physically, you've got to kind of be there.
Rest is a weapon. That's something we hear a lot, but it's important. So if you get a day where there's no game, sometimes it is more valuable to give everyone
practice.
A day off.
Yeah, more than a practice. So I think there are the big picture with parity, and we can get to some questions and some other things. The big thing with parity is, well, it keeps everybody in the game, the teams and the fans. And I understand that to a degree. But understand, in my opinion, the domino effect that has. Games are more intense. It's stressful. There are no easy games. What is the mental and physical grind that you get? No practice times as much as you maybe would. So there are trade-offs. I acknowledge that. I'm just telling you, for me, it's okay to have a few really good teams and everybody else trying to get to that level without saying, look, playing field is going to be closer than it's ever been because we've got this cap in place. And, the players are talented and more talented now than they've ever been. I don't know. I'm sure the league looks at it. I don't know if they care, or else we wouldn't be going to 84 games soon, would they? So keep that all in mind.
The league likes the parity. But what's interesting is for the general fan, and look, fans, especially in hockey, I think, have more allegiance to their team than just enjoying the sport. I think the NFL, there are reasons why people cheer for the Bucks in Tampa Bay. Okay. But they also have their eyeballs on other games, whether it's due to gambling or fantasy football or just teams that they like. They like to see them do well. Generally, and look at March Madness. Fans really love it when an underdog upsets a favored team. And there's something compelling about playoff races going down to the wire, right? So it's not a fait accompli well in advance of the end of a regular season. So I think with teams, generally, if your team is secure or not in the hunt or whatever, fans tend to like, if not parity, at least compelling races, which means that certain teams are not just, all the teams are not running away with it. But look about the individual athlete. I think the individual athlete is in a different category because most fans love the excellence from an individual athlete. They are not interested in, we have a whole bunch of players that are basically the same. They want to see Crosby. They want to see McDavid. They want to see Kucherov. They want to see McKinnon. They want to see the top guys. I mean, I don't think they want to see all-star games, but they do have an interest in best on best when we see that at some of these tournaments. And, I think with the individual player, fans across the board love excellence. I'm not sure when it comes to a team, though, fans, other than the fans of that team, love excellence. In fact, sometimes it gets the anti-excellence. It's like, this team wins too much. We want them to start losing. Nobody's saying about Connor McDavid, he's winning too many scoring titles. If he continues to do what he's doing, we marvel at his excellence, right? So it's just interesting, that dynamic sometimes. I mean, I guess Tom Brady was a little bit of a lightning rod because the Patriots did so well when he was there. I was always like, this guy is amazing. He is just amazing. And I love watching him play. And in Tampa, he came to the Bucs. So I think people look at him fondly, but there are a lot of people who were anti-Tom Brady for one reason or another. But I think that's a little bit in the minority. I mean, how many people didn't like Michael Jordan play, watching this guy play?
But you know what, though? They were at the top of their game. Now, you could say there was parity when Brady played, but because he was so much better or won so much more than other people, everybody could at least you had a strong opinion one way or the other. I think that's good for sports. The Yankees in their heyday, it's good to passionate about them one way, but it's also I despise the Yankees. I don't.
Yeah, but
people
didn't like the Yankees, but did people dislike Mariano Rivera? He was so dominant.
He was also likable. He was also very likable.
But
I'm not saying Brady wasn't.
I'm just drawing a distinction between rooting for a team or appreciating a team's excellence and appreciating a player's excellence. I think it's a lot easier to appreciate a player's excellence than a team's excellence, which goes to this, we like races, we like upsets, we like seeing the underdog, we like seeing races come down to the wire, we like seeing closeness of competition. I think there's something to that as well.
I mean, I usually think they go, you can appreciate somebody's ability, but you can also say, I don't want that team that he's on to continue to win. Obviously, Jordan, you knew he was the best basketball player maybe that ever lived. You watched the Bulls dominate, And you were like, yeah, I want the Utah Jazz to finally get one and beat them, or Seattle when they were playing them in the finals, or whoever it was, really. I think they kind of go hand in hand. Probably with the player, you can appreciate the mastery more than the actual team accomplishments because you want that team to lose, and because of that, you want the player that you're rooting against or maybe rooting for to lose as well in that specific scenario. It was just interesting. The practice stuff got me thinking of the parody and then everything involved with it. I think collectively, look, that's not going to go away. I don't think, partner, we're going to see less games being played because, as we know, the almighty dollar tends to play out.
And they are pulling 2 games from the preseason to play the 84, but you figure like those preseason games, maybe the regulars wouldn't have played in. So maybe it is 2 extra games for the regulars. Let me just go into some of the numbers that I uncovered, and I'll pull up the article here to share with the fans, because, I mean, I knew the Lightning were doing well in terms of kind of the metrics, but I guess I was a little surprised to see how well they were doing in relation to other teams in the East. So again, the 5 kind of main team categories that we look at on the show: goals scored per game, goals allowed per game, 5-on-5 goal ratio, power play, penalty killing. And if you take those 5 categories and look at each category individually, a team's ranking, and then kind of look at them together, I think you get a pretty accurate picture of what a team is about. Like you have often said, Greg, like, what is this team about? Well, maybe it takes 20 games to figure out what they are about. You can't look at these numbers after 5 games and get an accurate picture. But as we approach the halfway point of the year, I think it does paint an accurate picture. And certainly by the end of the year, it does as well. So just to remind the fans, last year in the regular season, in those 5 categories, the Lightning were a top 5 team in every one of those categories except penalty killing. They were 6th. That's why Julien Brisebois, after the Lightning lost to Florida in a very disappointing playoff series and a disappointing result, and frankly a series in which, at least in some of the games, the Lightning didn't do nearly as well as they did during the regular season. Their penalty kill let them down. They gave up too many goals. They didn't score in some games where they needed a goal, like Game 2. They were down 1-0 and lost with an empty net, or 2-0. But he said, look, if I can get the sorts of numbers from next year's team that we got this year, I'll be absolutely thrilled. So where are the Lightning as we approach the halfway point? All right. This year, as of today, goals scored per game, tied for 5th. Goals allowed per game, 5th. 5-on-5 goal ratio, tied for 3rd. Penalty killing, tied for 1st. And the 5th one has been a problem area this year, the power play. It's currently 23rd. They've been able to score enough, though, without the power play. Right. And then if you're tied for 5th in goals scored per game, that means, that kind of goes to the 5-on-5 goal ratio, right? Where the Lightning are tied for 3rd. That is outstanding. Remember how low they were a couple of years ago? They're doing a great job 5-on-5. There is no other team in the East that can match those numbers taken together. There isn't. The 2 teams that can kind of match it are Colorado and Dallas. Looking where Colorado and Dallas are, right? Sure. So the other teams in the East, maybe they score a lot, but they give up a lot. Maybe they do pretty well defensively, but they have trouble scoring, like the Rangers. Many times have the Rangers been shut out this year, right? But the Rangers are doing reasonably well defensively, which is why they are hanging in there. So the other part of this is the Lightning have the best goal differential in the East, plus 25. There are only 2 other teams in the entire Eastern Conference that are plus in double digits, Carolina and Washington. Every other team, if they are plus, it's single digits, and 8 of the 16 teams have a minus goal differential. Yeah. So if I were to ask you 38 games in, which team is more likely to make the playoffs? A team that has a plus 25 goal differential, the Lightning, or a team that has a minus 12 goal differential, Columbus? But you look at the standings, there's not that much of a gap between where the Lightning are and all these other teams. In fact, the Lightning aren't even first in the conference. Why is that? It's because they have had a lot of games where they played well enough to get points. The stats tell us that, but they haven't. That's why that Montreal game on Sunday was so important, because the Lightning need to balance the scales here. I mean, the idea is to just keep playing well, right? If you keep playing well, you're not going to have as many games as they've had in the first half where they've gotten no points. But they've played enough games well where they've got no points. You want to see some games, hopefully, where they don't play as well, because you're going to get some of those games, and they get points, which is what happened on Sunday. Basically, my diagnosis of the Lightning's first half is excellent play. And they've done it in the face of all these injuries, significant injuries, numerous injuries. They're popping out top 5 numbers in just about every major category except power play, where they really haven't had a lot of injuries. I mean, Kucherov's missed a couple of games, Point missed 7. Radish has filled in terrifically for Hedman, who has missed a lot of time, but it's hard to argue that their power play has really been affected significantly by the injuries they've sustained. It would be more like Chernak and McDonough out, penalty kill might be hurt, team defense might be hurt, 5-on-5 ratio might be hurt. No, those numbers are fantastic. So my diagnosis has been they've played really, really good hockey through 38 games. My prognosis is unclear in the final, 44 games, what's going to happen, because the standings race is so tight. But if the Lightning can keep playing at this level, I have to believe that they are going to gain some separation. It is hard for me to believe that these other teams with minus goal differentials and serious problems in certain categories are going to be able to maintain the pace that the Lightning would be able to set if they keep playing this way. But that's why you play the games. And the Lightning do have 2 very tough schedule stretches. One we've talked about. Actually, we've talked about both of them. One of them is basically starting tomorrow. A lot of road games in January. A lot of travel. Back-to-backs. They've got those in there too. And then right after the Olympic break. Let's see how they navigate through those.
We actually had a question from Mythos, who says, am I crazy to think we have a solid chance to sweep this road trip?
Well, last year the Lightning got swept. And none of these teams, I mean, certainly Anaheim and San Jose weren't as strong last year as they are this year.
Remember how bad San Jose was a couple years ago?
Yeah, they've improved.
With
they had a wild game. They had a wild game in Anaheim last night where they won 5-4. I think they got outshot like 42-13. So Anaheim is going to – so Mythos, the Ducks are coming in. They're going to have a burr in their saddle based on what happened to them last night. That was a game where they played well enough to win and got 0 points. But if you give up 5, it's hard to argue they got – I mean, maybe they got goalied a little bit. They had over 40 shots, but they scored 4. The problem was they gave up 5. On whatever it was, 13 shots. I may have had the shots a little bit wrong, but it was not a lot of shots. They gave up 5 goals.
42-13.
Isn't that what I said? Okay, 42-13. Yeah, thank you, Greg.
So I'm looking at it right now.
You swallow a game like that.
Come on.
One of 2 things can happen. You're going to come back ticked off in the next game, and Anaheim lost a tough game to the Lightning in Tampa earlier this year. That was the one where Cirelli scored late in the third on a power play. Or it starts to unravel on you a little bit. We'll see. I mean, Joe Quenneville's such a veteran coach. I think he's going to have them ready. Interestingly, I did see they scratched both Gudas and Vetrano last night, so I'm not sure if those are injury-related scratches. Vetrano hadn't missed a game all year, and Gudas got injured earlier in the year, but, yeah. I mean, he's their captain. I was going to say,
he's their captain, right?
Yeah, so I have to believe that those were not healthy scratch decisions, but they were coming off a blowout loss prior to that in LA on 27th, same day the Lightning played the Panthers. So maybe Quenneville was like, we're making some lineup changes. Who knows? I like their team. I mean, they were the worst defensive team in the NHL right now, which when I was looking up these numbers, I saw Anaheim is at the bottom, but they can score, which kind of jives with what happened last night.
Gudas was sick, by the way.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. So look, you're coming back less than 2 days later. The game tomorrow is 1:00 local time. So we'll see if Gudas is able to play. Lightning have had that happen to Kucherov. He's missed some games due to illness this year.
Avalanche beat the Kings, who the Lightning are going to see on this trip too, 5-2.
Hard to argue that there's a team better than Colorado. Dallas is in the vicinity. You look at Dallas's numbers. Dallas had great underlying numbers last year too. Like, they are actually better than the Lightning in a lot of those categories that I mentioned. Their power play is much better than the Lightning's power play. But I don't know. I just don't get the sense that the Avalanche just like impose their will on the other team. They just like,
I think that's right.
We know we're better than you.
Yeah.
We're just going to go out and we're going to outplay you. I feel like Dallas has more games. Like, they had that game against the Panthers. They only had 15 shots. I'm not sure Colorado has had a game like that this year where they got the other team imposed their will on the Avalanche. I don't think that has happened to Colorado this year.
I mean, partner, the first 3 teams in the Central would be in first place in the Atlantic.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's
they are the
incredible.
top 3 teams.
Yeah,
I think they are the top 3 teams in the NHL, in fact, aren't they? Is Minnesota ahead of Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah.
Carolina's got 51 points. Minnesota has 54.
Yeah, Minnesota got really hot. They did not have a great start to the year, and then Kaprizov got hot, and they made the trade, which I think, I mean, Hughes hasn't been there that long, but I think that he's really helped
Maybe
them.
added some life to them a
Yes.
little bit more. I mean, they almost have to.
Remember they got going when their goalie Wallstat really like grabbed the reins and was having shutouts left and right. But now they're scoring a lot too. They're an impressive team.
Colorado's a plus 66.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Like we can talk in rosy terms about the Lightning. The Lightning are nowhere close to what Colorado has done this year. I mean, they just aren't.
These are video game numbers. McKinnon is a plus 48.
Yeah.
Natchez plus 38. Makar plus 33. I mean, that's impressive. Again, kind of the theme we had at the beginning of the show with parity in today's game, to be this dominant in this era. That doesn't translate to a Stanley Cup, of course. You still have to play it, and it's going to be different in the playoffs. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on Colorado if they maintain this pace going into the postseason. But these
and
are
also look at their
numbers.
division. I mean, just looking at now, if it stays this way, Dallas and Minnesota would face each other in the first round. But still, I mean, the Avalanche are going to have to deal with a contender in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
If things kind of keep unfolding the way that they are, and those 3 teams are the most secure teams in the NHL. Because what did I say? The bottom 8 in the league are the bottom 8 in the West.
Yeah.
So those bottom 8 teams would have to make up a lot of ground to even get into the vicinity of even Minnesota.
Brent Burns is a plus 19. That probably tells you all you need to know. I mean,
what was it that Doug Plagans, when he joined us before the Lightning Panther game in Tampa, he was talking about Verhaeghe, and he's like, remember that video game with the NBA where the ball would like be on fire, and like that's Verhaeghe when he gets hot. That's like the whole Colorado team this year. They're just playing with like a ball on fire.
Yeah,
he's
heating. I think it's like NBA Jam. I think that might have been
NBA Jam. That's
he's
what it was.
heating up. That was always fun. But that's pretty impressive. When what's funny is those are nice to look at for me when I'm looking collectively at the regular season. I don't know if that means a ton for me, because I do know the postseason is drastically different than the regular season. And you may be right.
Yeah.
They are imposing their will. We've seen teams impose their will in the playoffs, and they've been able to run through it. And maybe that's what happens with Colorado.
What we have seen with the teams that are basically setting the wins and points records, the Lightning had it one year where they tied Detroit. Boston did it a couple of years later. They won 65, and both those teams lost in the first round of the playoffs. The Red Wings lost in the second round in 96 when they got to they lost did they lose in the conference final? They lost in the conference final to Colorado.
Yeah.
But they had a tough second round series where they had to beat St. Louis in Game 7 in overtime. So it was a struggle. Well, we heard a little bit from the Lightning for sure, because we were covering that team in 18-19. And I think the same was true of the Bruins, the year the Bruins won 65. You have that kind of a regular season, you have not really been punched in the mouth. And what happens if you do get punched in the mouth? How do you respond? How do you respond when all of a sudden it's really difficult? When things aren't just going your way. Now, it's not like they're innocent bystanders here Colorado I'm talking about. Like, they are doing the things necessary to win all of these games.
Sure.
They're not just, like, putting their feet up and it's like, oh, every light is green. The road is paved. We can just cruise right along. Like, they're earning what they're getting. But what happens when the road gets bumpy? How are you going to handle that? And I'm not talking about a game where maybe they're down 3-0, some garden variety game in late November where they rally and win. They are in such a comfortable position right now. They are not, unless something really weird happens, and I'm not sure they even are going to care if Dallas happens to catch them. They'll care a little bit. But it's not like fighting for your playoff life or being in a series and all of a sudden you're down. Or in the case of the Bruins, you had a 3-1 lead. And the other team keeps making plays. You're like, what is going on here? When the Panthers beat the Bruins in 2023 in that first-round playoff series, for sure in Game 6 and 7, and I think in Game 5 too, the Bruins had a lead in all 3 of those games, and they lost all 3.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure in Game 6 and 7. And in Game 6 and 7, they had a lead in the third period, and they lost both those games. That, I'm certain, did not happen to them with any kind of regularity in a year in which they won 65. So all of a sudden it happened to you, and it happens to you when the stakes are at their highest and you have all of this pressure. That's the other part. In 2019, everybody expected the Lightning, if not to win the Cup, certainly to beat Columbus. Everybody expected the Bruins to beat Florida that year. Who would pick Florida? I mean, Florida had a good finish, but the Bruins won 65. You have to base a prediction on what had happened over the previous 6 months. I am fairly confident that when the Colorado Avalanche enter the playoffs, people are going to be overwhelmingly picking them to beat whoever they see in the first round. So what happens if things start going, but what happens when things start going sideways? That's the danger. It seems like a really obscure danger right now because everything is rolling for them. And as I said, they're earning what they're getting. But that's something to monitor. If they get into a tough series, how will they handle it? Now, the one thing that is benefiting them is they do have a lot of veteran players on that team and players that have been through playoff struggles where you really have to pull on the rope.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a devastating loss last year in the first round to Dallas where they were up in the third period of Game 7 and blew it. So they know what it's like. They just haven't really experienced that. They haven't had to experience that this year.
You don't want to experience it, but many times you have to go through those heartbreaks.
They're not going to experience it until the playoffs start. Not where they are right now.
No, correct.
Yeah.
But to your point, can Colorado lean on that if things get a little late? Look, the Lightning certainly had to learn the hard way.
They did.
You know, and I think you do. By the way, I think that's healthy. I know it stinks in the short run. How you handle adversity. I think that's a nice lesson in life. Jim, to Mythos's point about a solid chance of sweeping this road trip.
I think he means you, Mythos, not you, Greg and Dave. We didn't say
look, I've been called worse, but what the hell? He says, Anaheim and San Jose have quick and fast, high-scoring teams. LA has shut down defense. The West Coast swing is no longer a cakewalk, but I like the grit our team has shown. Yeah, I mean, I think that's all fair.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the Kings and how they play.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a valid point. Jim says this is more for Mish. When you go to San Jose, take a 10-minute walk west of the tank to Alameda to Cafe Rosalina's for the absolutely best breakfast burritos in the country. Get the orange sauce. So a little recommendation there.
Yeah.
You're not a big breakfast guy, though,
So sometimes we stay downtown. No, I don't mind breakfast.
You like a good breakfast? Good.
The big breakfast is not really my thing unless it's a late breakfast. Sometimes the Lightning stay downtown. This time we are not downtown. There's another area where the team sometimes stays. A little harder. It's a little harder to get to downtown from. But I mean, look, you can always Uber, right? I'm just like, if I can walk to a place, I'm going to walk to a place. I'm not going to jump in a car unless it's a meeting someone or.
Unless you're with Phil and somebody is pulling you guys to a game. I love that. That was Colorado, right?
That was Colorado.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Andrew says, are the 3 California teams able to practice more than the Lightning? And if so, does that put them at a significant circumstantial disadvantage?
Well, I mean, Anaheim and the Lightning are in the same boat, basically, because Anaheim played last night. So both teams will have a practice excuse me, today. LA played last night. They don't play again until New Year's Day. I don't know. I mean, the teams will get one practice in probably. I haven't looked at San Jose's schedule yet.
And all I'll just say is, what are we talking about? We talk about practice.
Yeah. It's less about whether your opponent has time to practice. I think it's more about, like, if things are rolling, you may not need to practice. It's when things start to go off kilter that coaches want to have the on-ice practice.
Coaches want to put their hands on everything, you know. Somebody said if we extend overtime a little bit more to 7 minutes, the coaches are going to find a way to make that as boring as possible, because it's going to be guys just how do we protect getting to the shootouts? I get it.
I happen to see some comments from Montreal fans after the game on Sunday where they were bemoaning the shootout, right? Overtime should be 10 minutes. Well, look, they have Caulfield, they have Suzuki, they have guys who really like the 3-on-3. And sometimes, you know, when you lose the shootout and you play really well otherwise, which they did in that game, you're like, the shootout's ridiculous, you know. Listen, but it is what it is. There are reasons why they don't want 3-on-3 to last 10 minutes.
I'm going to tell you something right now. That you continue to slowly increase the regular season, you got to think about how you want to look at that overtime too, because that is a lot of energy that is expanded on the players.
Would you just go to ties?
I'm not a big fan.
I mean, a tie after 5 minutes and not having a tie after 5 minutes and going to the shootout, there's no extra energy expended there because the shootout doesn't require a lot of energy.
I think this is an interesting debate, maybe one we can have later. I do think we're coming to a point now where the shootouts need to be really debated whether we need them or not. I understand that you kind of want to break the tie. I look, I'm not old school, but I think in sports there should be a winner and there should be a loser. That is why you play, and I get why we have a shootout. That was in part two coming out of the lockout. They wanted to draw more fans to the game, and that was a cool way to maybe have something different that fans could get excited about. You're standing when you're watching guys with a shootout. I think it's like a lot of things. I think it's lost a lot of its pizzazz. And I think if you're going to go 84 games, and then look, in 5 years, we're going to have a 90-game regular season schedule, I don't know if it's beneficial. Look, we're talking about lack of practice time, players. It's more about recovery than it is practicing. I mean, the overtime period, it's certainly not going to increase. But I think there's a fair question. Like, the longer the regular season goes, and if you have 3-on-3 part of the process, your top players are playing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, you may have to rethink how things are going. And I don't want to go back to, look, after 20 minutes, it's a tie. But now you got to start protecting your most valuable commodity, which are the players.
I don't think there's anything imminent in terms of a rule change with that.
No.
I mean, the one thing might be changing the point setup, which would be a nod in that direction, that a regulation win does count more. If you're winning the game before it gets to overtime, it counts more. I don't know if we're going to get to that point. As I said in a show a couple of weeks ago, we would get to that point if and only if a bunch of teams that did really well get regulation wins, like they win a lot of games before overtime, a team would miss the playoffs because the team that got in ahead of them had a lot fewer wins in regulation, but just banked all these overtime points. That's when you're going to see potentially an appetite to change it, not before. And I don't think we would be going back to ties right away. Maybe they would extend the overtime. I think the PA might have some pushback there. And what do you do if you're tied after 10 minutes? Like that Lightning Montreal game, both teams were they didn't press on the gas to try and get a goal at the expense of giving up something the other way. Neither team did it.
Sure.
So you could have had 10 minutes of we'll call it positional hockey in that overtime game. Even though Montreal did control the vast majority of the possession, they didn't get much out of it. We talked about that on yesterday's show. The Lightning defended well. What happens if you had another 5 minutes like that? So what are you going to do after 10 minutes if it's still tied?
Well, and to your point, does the shootout really Are you really exuding a lot of energy in the shootout?
You're not. So, I mean,
probably not.
Like ending the game after 5 minutes of overtime in a tie or going to the shootout, there's no additional energy expended with the shootout. Adding 5 minutes more of overtime would tax the players more, and you may still not have a winner. So what are you going to do after 10 minutes? Then do you go to a tie? Then do you go to the shootout? Are you going to still keep the 2-1 point setup? Because if you're going to say the loser doesn't even get a point, let's say, there's also been talk about that. Like if you win the game, you win the game, right? Teams are going to really hunker down because they're not going to want to lose the point.
I actually love that idea.
I think it would affect how overtimes are played.
I think you're right. But I want a winner and I want a loser. I would almost say, this would be really harsh. I would almost say once you get to overtime, whoever wins gets 2 points. Whoever loses doesn't get anything.
Right. So it would just be like a regular win.
So that's what I would do. Don says, love the show. Don, we love you. Appreciate that. Chris says, New Year's blessings, Bolts Nation, Mish, Greg, and Steve, and staff. Yes, we appreciate you guys. This is an interesting question. Aaron says, I understand the argument that Sabrin was responding to the hit to the head against Florida, but I would like to see the muscle we have been calling up have a little more discipline. Protect our stars. I think those are two separate questions because a little more discipline, okay. I mean, I get that part. I've never been a big believer in today's game. Some would disagree because we had Sabrin challenge Greer, who doesn't want to drop the gloves with Sabrin, but that hasn't stopped Greer from doing atrocious things to the Lightning or his teammates. I don't know if enforcers protect the Stars and have that same type of impact like we saw 25, 30 years ago. Like if you knew Bob Probert was roaming around, were you going to take less risk hitting Steve Yzerman? Maybe. Or Marty McSorley with Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah.
Potentially. Different times, though. Because if you touch Gretzky, what did we have? We had a bench-clearing brawl.
Right. You also had no instigator penalty, which, look, people were like, what does that matter? It's a 1-2 minute minor, but it does have an effect.
I like to have a guy who can take care of business. I think when Luke Shen and Pat Maroon and Bogosian were kind of roaming around, was there any statistical analysis done that somebody looked at that and said, when they were in the lineup, less of this happened? I don't know. I'd have to go back. It was nice having them, and I think they did their best to prevent it. That famous game, was it against the Islanders, where basically the three of them were at center ice, and they were just challenging the Islanders like, you're not going to do anything.
A war council.
Yes, you're not going to do it. You're not. And did that have an impact in the game? Maybe it did. I don't know if people fear Sabrin and Douglas, but we do know they're willing combatants. But it hasn't stopped the Florida Panthers from going over the line, even when they're in the lineup. So I'm not sure what to make of it.
Yeah, I think the Sabrin reaction, I believe, and I didn't talk to him about it, I believe some of this had to do with who delivered the elbow. If it had been like Uvis Balinskis delivering the elbow, Sabrin wouldn't have been happy. But the fact that it was Mikkola and he knew it was Mikkola, and this guy has done this before, this guy has had questionable hits going back years against the Lightning. I think that's what set Sabrin off. He knew the history. He knew what happened in the last game with this guy. I think that's why. But the fan is right that, his reaction was going to put the Lightning short. I didn't like the fact that it put them short for 4 minutes. I thought the officials might have had a little bit more of finger on the pulse of what happened on that play. They didn't. But look, what you think, what I think, what the fans think, like the most important person thinking about this is Julian Brisebois, and by extension, his management team and Jon Cooper. And they like it. There's a reason why Douglas and Sabrin have played in every game against the Panthers this year. Maybe things would have gotten worse if they hadn't been in the lineup. We'll never know. We can't prove the opposite, right? We can only look at what has happened in the games in which they have played. And Look, unfortunately, Hagel has still been targeted. In one of the 3 games, Hagel was targeted. There's no question. And now they are targeting, I will say this, they are targeting. I don't think that the Lundell high stick was as intentional. I think he was reckless. And I finally saw a replay. He kind of got spun around and he swung the stick. But to me, it is pretty clear that they are targeting Gensel.
Right.
Mikkola targeted Gensel, Greer targeted Gensel. So Hagel's not in the lineup, or he's been knocked out of the game. Or the one in Tampa, actually, they did Gensel first. But Gensel is another high-skill guy on the Lightning who tends to play well against the Panthers. He does. So they're running it in now.
The only
Maybe
thing
that's overstating it, but I mean, look at the information we've gotten from the last 2 games. What abuse Gensel has taken from the Panthers. So
no, I agree with you, and this is where we have problems, because in today's game, it really comes down to the officiating, refereeing appropriately. And when that goes haywire, it's actually more impactful than having an enforcer on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you have an official who takes care of the business early on and says, this isn't happening, none of this BS is going to go on, you're out. And whether you agree with it or not, it may soften the blow, no pun intended. But if you let it go on, if you miss some calls, if you let the egregious acts continue, the officiating is more impactful than an enforcer roaming around saying, okay, next person that takes a shot at my star player, they're going to pay. To me, that's kind of where we are in today's game.
Yeah.
The enforcing has to come from the officials, not necessarily the players. And I know that's contradictory to what NHL hockey is all about in many ways. But I just haven't seen enough evidence that an enforcer does the job more than if an official or the crew takes control of it more. And I think that's just kind of where I am. Tonight, by the way, enjoy some Refrom. It's smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Refrom is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Refrom by name. Go Bolts and enjoy responsibly. Please make sure you do that. Let me get to Aaron. Did he also have this question? So impressive what the team has done despite injuries. If they were struggling to stay in a playoff spot, we would be talking about how this could be expected given the key injuries. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's very fair.
That's been one of the biggest storylines this year.
Yeah. E for whatever says Bolts fan for life, but want to hear your thoughts on a slash from Barzal to Marchment, and Barzal only getting fined $5,000. Love the show. And see you all at the Stadium Series flying from NYC.
Oh, very nice. Well, hopefully you enjoy the game.
So
I did see a couple of those replays. Did you see the situation?
I saw the replay
of
Barzal. And all I'm going to say is you cannot use your stick as a weapon. And that's, to me, how I looked at it. I'm not telling you that emotions don't run high. Factor all of that in. You can't. In today's game, you can't do that. Do you disagree?
So I was actually thinking of the Savarin play.
Yeah.
Because Savarin slashed in Mikkola's skates.
It's fair.
So the fan asked about, what did we think about the $5,000 fine? So to me, those were similar type of plays, actually. And if you're the Islanders, you're like, well, Savarin did this. He didn't get, like, Barzal got a major. I think he got a major in a game. I'd have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure he got a major, though. Maybe he was allowed to stay in the game. So his penalty was more severe than Savarin's, and he got fined more than Savarin got fined. Now, why Barzal did it? They felt that Marchment did a dirty trip on Schaefer. There is no question that Schaefer has been, I'll use this word again, targeted. If you don't want to use the word
that's
targeted.
Their guy at 18.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, right?
The NHL is trying to introduce Schaefer to the NHL game. And seeing, essentially, if he has the courage, you can pick another word, but the courage to kind of fight through it, right? And from what I've seen, it looks like he is unnerved by that. Or not unnerved. He is unaffected by that. Like, he is fine. Like, he's taken some rough hits. That was an open ice trip that the Islanders didn't like at all. He went down hard, but he was involved in the scrum later, like because Barzal reacted on Marchment. So the Islanders are sensitive to this, and I can understand that. Am I surprised that he wasn't suspended? I can't say that I'm surprised because, again, as we learned from the Lightning Panthers preseason game, what the DOPS takes into account is, like, what was the penalty in the game? And if Barzal didn't miss basically 2 periods, I guess I should go back and look and see if he had a game misconduct. But, I mean, the Islanders did pay a price for that slash. So the DOPS is, like, taking it into account. They're like, we're not suspending him, but we are fining him. So they did give him some supplemental penalty, we'll say. But it didn't involve with him missing any more time than he missed in that one game. But, I mean, look, if Matthew Schaefer, the Islanders are not happy with something that's happening to Matthew Schaefer, and they've seen it, we'll just say multiple times this year. They're going to have a quick trigger finger to react. And the fact that it was Barzal, I mean, he's a fiery guy. I'm not sure that he is known as a pugilist or somebody who would do something like that. You know, that just shows how much they love this kid, right? Like he's gonna step up for him. And Marchment has a little bit of a reputation of doing some stuff like that. Not as flagrant as some other guys, but I think he has that reputation. So I think the Islanders were sensitive to that too, that he was the one who did it. Again, if like Werenski, not that Werenski would be up in the play like Marchment was, let's say Werenski like trips Schaefer, the reaction might have been a little different.
Makes sense.
But I understand what you're saying. Like you have to be in control. Like you can't use your stick as a weapon.
You know, it's just not that I'm more sensitive, but I mean, I do think we've put so much emphasis on player safety and hits to the head that I think we have to be cognizant of the stick in your hand and something that is premeditated. I mean, that stick can hurt somebody. I mean, I'm not talking about a high stick that's not intentional. I'm talking about using it as a weapon, hammering somebody, and next thing you know, maybe you get a broken ankle.
Right.
You know, I just think I just if you're trying to protect the players, that goes beyond hits to the head and hitting you from behind.
Mm-hmm. Barzal got a game, by the way.
I think you need to be in control of your stick. I just, if that means everybody is accountable, then that's fine. This question.
And by the way, I'm just looking at the box score. They did give Marchment, a tripping minor.
Yeah.
So unlike the situation with Sabarin, the officials did call an original penalty.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Ranger 5253 says, Dave, what's your honest take on the power play? I feel like the beginning of the season versus now, it's looking way better, even though we're still 23rd. And what's one suggestion you would make to fix it?
Well, if we take out the 3 games the Lightning played against the Panthers, which we can't, what are the Lightning? 0 for 15 in those 3 games against the Panthers? Let me actually look up their power play percentage. Let me have you do some math here, Greg. Let's see how the power play actually looks if we take out those 3 games against the Panthers, which I'm going to just do because I feel like doing it, because they have been horrendously bad against the Panthers, but I'm not sure they've been as horrendously bad against other teams. So this year, the Lightning have scored 21 goals on 123 opportunities. So, look, I actually don't need to do the math. So, if we take out the 15 that they have not scored against the Panthers, their percentage is just a nick under 20%. Because you're looking at 21 out of 108. So, based on my math, 20% would be 21 out of 105. So let's just put a nick under 20%. That puts them at about 12th or 13th in the NHL. Still not as high as where they like to be, but substantially better. So we can't take out those 3 games against the Panthers, and ultimately they're going to have to figure out how to do better against the Panthers penalty kill. That is like their, should I use the word kryptonite? I mean, it's not like the Lightning are Superman on the power play against other teams this year, but they're better. They're better against other teams. than they've been against the Panthers. And it's not that the Panthers have an aggressive kill. The Lightning have broken down aggressive kills in other games. So I guess I would separate it and say, like, when they're not seeing the Panthers, what could they do better? Win faceoffs would help, because that would give them more time in the offensive zone, although I do think that they are getting better at re-entering the zone. That was a little bit of a problem earlier in the year. I think they're getting in the zone, again, not against the Panthers, but against other teams. When it gets shot down the ice, generally they're doing better re-entering the zone. And, I mean, generally speaking, I have said confidence will help. So, seeing the puck go in more will help them more. Having more of a shooting mentality, which is sometimes not something the top unit does, I think would also help. They're not going to just look to shoot first, but I think more shots generally opens things up. On the other hand, when they score goals on the power play, it's usually because somebody's making a really nice play, like Gensel to Bjorkstrand in the St. Louis game. It was a beautiful pass. Bjorkstrand buried it, right? So that's how that unit likes to score goals.
I think if you address the power play to a degree, you're also going to be tinkering with the top six, and that's going to come in the form of an acquisition. So there's, I think, a double whammy there in terms of how would you attack the power play. The other thing is you just hope the guys you have on this team get back to being more productive on the power play. We've seen Radish on the back end at times be okay with a shot. Keep in mind, you're doing all of this without Victor Hedman or a healthy Victor Hedman for most of the year. We kind of figure that out. I think he's always been a pretty big player back there on the power play with that shot, although Radish has done a nice job filling in for him. So that could be part of it too. Bjorkstrand and Point haven't gotten on track. Actually, Point more so than Bjorkstrand from that perspective. So I think some of this
Bjorkstrand leads the team with 5 power play goals.
Hard to believe, right? Hard to believe. It doesn't feel like that.
Right. Well, he's only scored 6.
Right.
So
I know you asked Dave Ranger, but my thought would be some of this is the guys that you have currently who are slumping get into more of a rhythm. And if you go out and make a trade, keep in mind the domino effect I think that's going to have, because if you're getting somebody to help on the power play on the first unit, most likely that player is going to be in a top 6 too. Yeah. Right? You're not getting a fourth liner to, figure out the first power play unit. So I think that's kind of where we are. I
would just close with this on that question, which is something we talked about before, when the power play has really hurt the Lightning because they need a goal and they're not getting one. I think the 5-man unit on the top unit is the unit the Lightning want. People might quibble with that, but that's the unit they want. They want the 3 righties, Radish, Point, and Bjorkstrand. Generally, Point in the bumper, Bjorkstrand at the circle, Radish at the point, Gensel, goal line extended to the front of the net, and Kucherov at the right circle. That's the unit. That's the personnel that they want. That's the setup they want. So then it comes down to executing. Somebody else might say they need different personnel.
Yep.
I mean, Bjorkstrand would be the obvious guy that would be taken out. And usually when the Lightning make a shift, Bjorkstrand is coming out like for Cirelli to win the faceoff, let's say. They send Cirelli out to win the faceoff. He's replacing Bjorkstrand. He's not replacing Kucherov, right? Somebody might say, well, they need to change personnel or they need to change the setup. I'm not in that camp. I think that this is the unit that they want. I think this is the setup that they want. It comes down to executing better. And the fan was kind of like, it feels like the power play is doing better maybe than the percentage. I'm not going to argue with that. I think that they have had some looks. They had one chance against Montreal. The power play actually looked pretty good. They just didn't score, right? That can happen sometimes. So I think we're starting to see more of that, with the huge caveat that they are a complete mess when they play the Panthers.
Sure.
Their power play looks completely out of sync and, seems to get they get lots of power plays in some of these games. They get worse as the game goes on.
That might be mental too now as much as it is physical.
Yeah.
One of those things. So we'll address that when we get there, but improvements have been made. I think the biggest improvements can come from players who are currently on the roster, just being a little bit more productive. Partner, that's going to wrap it up for us. Tomorrow we'll be getting ready for a game.
Last show
we're not going to have a show.
Yeah,
that's right. We're not going to have a show.
Happy New Year to all the fans.
That's right. Make sure everybody's safe. We want you back here on Friday. But, of course, you can listen to the broadcast tomorrow. On the air, 3:30 pregame.
Yeah, you
time,
say
correct?
it, please, because I'm all confused with the time changes.
Times are just nuts. So
yeah,
we'll,
4 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah.
So you're on at 3:30.
Love it. That's what we do. Partner, great job, as always, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Talk to you tomorrow.
For the game. Great work. Thanks to Steve Ersnick, Jared Johnson as well. Thanks to you for listening. We always appreciate it, guys. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.